What a game. First off, before I even get into the slightest amount of details for this game, I will be talking spoilers throughout this entire video. That includes story beats, gods, and characters that you meet and interact with along the way, weapons, powers, and everything else in between. So if you care about any of that, please come back once you've taken some time to either finish the game. Otherwise, if you don't mind, let's dive right into this incredible action game that is the sequel to one of the best roguelike games out there. When it comes to linear progression, I've gotta say, I think we've just about reached the peak of it here with Hades 2. And I'm not just talking about reaching the top of Mount Olympus either. A ton of roguelites out there will have you on a treadmill just kind of going non-stop without really getting anywhere. And that is totally fine. Usually they allow for a lot of horizontal progression where you unlock more items and options, but not necessarily increasing in power by much. And these more options can allow you to manifest some insane combinations of items and weapons, but they don't allow you to see that small amount of progression after each run. Whether you made it to the end or not, seeing just that small incremental change and upgrade is something that I prefer out of these sort of games. We'll chat more about progression mechanics as we get further into this review, but I do want to mention it here at the start because it brings up a bigger point that I want to make, and that is that the sense of scale and power with Hades and the sequel here showcase how a roguelike formula of restarting every time that you die can enhance a story, but also embrace a new way to play. You feel that slight difference each time you go on a run, and that's the core of what I enjoy here. That's what keeps me going. I feel the slightest changes and all those small additions come together over time. Characters also mention these changes. My home base starts to look different. My weapons and magic feel and act in fun and new ways. And I love this. Roguelikes are not going anywhere anytime soon. They don't have to maintain linear progression to feel good, to be a fun experience, or anything like that, but when they do it right, or should I say, when they perfect the formula, it's something special. So here's to you, Hades 2. Getting into the overall narrative, it picks up quite a few years after Hades 1, where we play as a new character, the younger sister of Zagreus. Her name is Melinoë. She is our new protagonist, who is just as lethal and swift as her older brother, but she does have a drastically different personality and choice of armaments. She grew up outside of her home in the crossroads with Hecate, and this is due to the primary plot point, which is where Kronos froze everyone in time, and then summoned all the bad guys in the underworld to do his bidding. This kept everyone away from the home of Hades and allowed him to take over and sit upon the throne of the underworld. And this is his attempt to enact revenge on his children for imprisoning him for all of time. But at the moment that Kronos attacks the underworld and the home of Hades, Melinoë is handed over to Hecate by Hades himself. He asks her to take care of his daughter while they try to defend and repel the forces of Kronos from whatever it is that he's planning to do while invading their home. We learn that the primary objective of everyone in the crossroads, except for maybe a select few, is to bring Kronos to his knees, defeating and releasing everyone, allowing everyone to sorta go back to normal and not be stuck in the crossroads for all of eternity. Hecate sort of acts as a mother for Melinoë and a mentor, teaching her everything that she needs to know for her attempt to combat her grandfather and save her family and loved ones. And this is where we start with Hades 2, where we're met with an opening that says a few clever things about Hades' reign of the underworld coming to an end due to his past catching up to him, and how history repeats, only in a matter of time. This simple yet quick opening sets us up for everything within the story. Every snippet of dialogue from characters helps us build out and flesh out this world and its people. When we have these conversations with people, we get an idea of maybe why or what they're doing in a given moment to either help us or kind of just live their own life. So we know our main goal here, and it's to take on Kronos, free the people of the underworld, and die a few times while trying. But what we come to find out upon defeating Kronos is that, for one, he can't really die. He just resets time to before that day that he died, and you have to kind of restart each time. Meaning that we do have to combat him a few times, but we end up learning along the way that, well, there is a way to defeat him, but we gotta kind of find an alternative. We also know that for some reason the gods up on Olympus are having some trouble with being attacked as well, so we want to go up there and help them. But after we find a useful concoction that allows us to survive on the surface for more than about 60 seconds, because prior to that it would just sap away our health and we died within a minute or two, once reaching the surface and working our way through some of these new environments, that not only expand the enemies and zones, but also expands for the people that we meet along the way. And we'll chat more about each individual later, but as we climb higher and higher up to Mount Olympus, going from fighting little ghosts and ghouls and whatever else there is, we also begin fighting these crazy abominations with eyeballs and tentacles and the like, which are way more difficult to dispatch compared to the enemies in the underworld. Getting here takes a small miracle. Then as we finally do get to the very top, we find out what's truly going on, why the gods need our help, and boy do they fucking need it, because Typhon is here, the father of all monsters. He's almost the size of the mountain itself, and boy does he sling some shit at you. He is hands down the hardest battle in the game, at least prior to completing the game, and if you're able to come out on top though, you get to enter the hallowed halls of Olympus, where Zeus and a few other gods are residing. They've been defending their home from this monstrous creature while also trying to provide you some aids through their boons for attempting to fight Kronos or Typhon. Both of these final bosses require a handful of defeats before you get to see the true ending of the game, and once you finally do complete this, we're met with a handful of scenes that show everyone living pretty much happily ever after, for the most part at least. Typhon is defeated, Kronos is being less of an asshole and decides to hang out with the family. Melinoë, on the other hand, decides that she doesn't want to return to the home of Hades and live with her family, but instead wants to possibly stay in the Crossroads. Initially, her thought was that she wanted to kind of save everyone and return to her family and live, all together. But upon reaching this final goal and freeing everyone, she realizes that the Crossroads is where she belongs. Yes, it was required because of the situation to defeat Kronos, yet at the end she understands that the Crossroads is where she feels most comfortable and at home. She spent pretty much her entire life here, alongside Hecate and the others. The Crossroads is home. It wasn't just temporary. So now that she's made the decision to stay in the Crossroads, she can actually go and chat and talk with any of her family members or anything really at any time. So it's not that big of a deal to stay living there. Now that's it for the major plot points, and there are a ton of smaller sections that mean a lot and contribute to the overall characters, especially with how they interact throughout the story. Similar with other games, and like our time in the first game with Zagreus before, there is seemingly an infinite number of dialogues to occur between characters. Everyone always has something new to talk about, and so we'll move on to the music and voice acting in just a moment, but one final thought that I want to talk about with the story here is the stakes were kind of higher than the first game because it was more important, because there was more people at risk and more problems to resolve, yada yada, but yet it's tied to a more simplistic theme. And that theme being, oh, everyone is frozen by the big bad guy and I gotta go stop him. And when you complete this, wait, now the big bad guy is actually being a big good guy. I don't know, and that's the end of the game. It follows a simple structure and nature behind it that allows the flow of the narrative and other aspects surrounding it to remain a bit more complex without losing the plot, and I did like that. But how you defeat Kronos and how Typhon came to be and why the gods are doing what they're doing, along with the way that we come to defeat both of them and the routes that we take, they all have meaning and purpose, but they aren't the primary focus. The main deal is getting the bad dude to stop being bad. And although I can appreciate a more dumbed down version of a main plot point like this, not everything has to be completely disjointed and pieced together through overtly contextual conversations that only give you hints to specifics, but are never definitive in nature. I felt it just wasn't as good as the first game. But sometimes that's okay. Sometimes in games it's alright to just hear someone say that, hey, that dude is a bad dude. Let's go stop him. And that's alright. You just gotta come into this knowing that the story is a little bit more simple, and that's okay. A final last thought here regarding the story is that Melinoë is just so one note. And what I mean by that is, although Zagreus was a little bit one note as well sometimes in the first one, it's not a drastic change from primary characters there, but Melinoë is literally just, I was separated at birth and now I must reunite my family, and she cracks some minimal jokes here and there, but she's very very serious for the majority of conversations, and she is so straightforward that she's just a bit boring. At least with Zagreus, he would joke around a lot more and seem to have a bit of fun with it all. Yes, the overall story leans to be a bit more serious in tone this time, which favors her demeanor, but I just personally wish that there was a bit more. Although she does open up and treat people differently based on the way that they treat her over time, I don't know, something about it. I just like Zagreus more in the way that he spoke to people and goofed around a bit more, yet Melinoë is just always so like stoic and let's get things done, but with a slight bit of lightheartedness behind it. But alright, that's gonna be it for that. Let's get on to music and the voice actors with audio. I do specify here for a very specific reason, voice actors and music, because, well, in my opinion, it's probably 50% of the reason this game is as incredible as it is. Let's break down the characters and the voices behind them. Each god, mortal, monstrous creature, or whatever in betweens you can find, all have incredibly mixed sound design and dialogue. When you're hitting enemies, your weapons make the appropriate clings and clangs, pows and pops, swooshes and slashes. But this isn't all. It's interlaced with your dashes, with their attacks, and with their reactions to your attacks. It's all just so clean. You can hear each distinct note from one another, and as they come together to make beautiful sounds of the battlefield, it all just keeps flowing and vibing together throughout the entire time you're playing. Whether you're on the surface or the underworld, it all sounds amazing, and specifically with the music, I have to mention a few small things here. Every character that you meet during your runs has their own theme song. Not the gods necessarily with their boons, but everyone else. They all have unique tones to accompany their conversations and the like how fucking good is that? The songs across the board are no slouch either, whether it's the lighthearted and wispy sounds of meeting Circe and obtaining a blessing from her, or Medea, who is a bit darker in tone, maybe Dionysus, who runs a nightclub and is basically naked. But at least his club has banging music, right? There are many others, but I'll point those out later when I speak more specific about characters, but these ballads that accompany these people, they keep me excited to go out of my way and to find them, even just to see them, maybe get their boons and talk with them, but listen to their soundtrack and enjoy it while I'm there. And as most people already know and have probably talked about in the past, there's also one of the coolest boss fights I've ever seen, which is Scylla and the Sirens, a trio band who all join together to play their part in songs for chorus, drums, and guitar. Once defeating one of them, that portion of the song drops off. Murder the drummer, and all you'll hear is the subtle tones of the guitar player and Scylla screaming her lungs out. No more drums can be heard for the rest of the fight, at least until they come back in part 2, but the same goes for the others. Once you defeat 2 of them, there's a solo or whoever is left. They all perform separately during this fight, and yes, that pun was intended. I won't get too much into the mechanics here, just know that they have a unique way of demonstrating their music and also have a new song on occasion, where it's not just the same one on repeat. And my last note regarding the music, the final song here at the end of the game where the credits are rolling, we get possibly the best song in the entire game. Here, just to listen to it for a moment.
Before the dawn, only dark shrouds the sky. In the east, when the sun begins to rise, shadows stretch their gloomy figures.
Artemis and Apollo are a perfect combination here, and it fucking slaps, right? It's crazy how good this is. While editing this, my arm hair is standing up, so I can't say more than that. I'm a big lover of music all around, and this game does a lot to impress. As I said, the audio makes up about 50% of this game for me, which is a good thing. But now let's chat about the voice acting before we move on. Hades 1 was already massively impressive with this, but they turned it up a notch in the sequel. Every single god has a unique, distinctive tone to them. You know when you interact with someone via their boon or in person, exactly how they will respond or treat you. And it also determines how that tone comes across and how it makes that interaction feel unique. Hestia is a loving woman with a British accent that sounds like a rural country lady, almost like a a southern lady from the US with an accent, and I loved it, especially since that's where I'm from, is the South. But others like Ares is always so moody and gloomy sounding, always serious in a way. Athena is regal and sounds as if she stands with perfect posture and form. Narcissus is fucking perfect. He almost sounds a bit like Nicolas Cage to me, and I love him for that. Aphrodite is sensual. Hermes is hopped up on drugs, it seems, going a mile a minute. Zeus tries to sound powerful in his old age, but still sounds old. Everyone sounds as they should, but in the best way. I also have to point out my boy Ben Starr as Prometheus. The moment that I heard him, I knew exactly who it was. Hecate and Odysseus as well back at the camp are always informal but sincere in their tones. Yet we have Nemesis, who is always a fucking asshole. Dora, on the other hand, is your best friend who is a shade and enjoys cracking jokes with you and messing with you every time that you return. And I love how even the smallest things are noticed, like Hecate mentioning the weapons or boons that you've obtained leading up to that boss fight with her during that run. Or if you happen to get a boon out of a bag, the god will mention that it feels stuffy in there and how they felt like they were shoved in there with no regard. The duo boons are back as well, where the gods will even chat with each other for a moment, or the rival ones, where you have the two options of which one you select, and then the other one gets pissed off and attempts to hurt you as you clear the wave of enemies that spawn. A lot of smaller interactions like this add up over time to make the characters and world feel so fleshed out, and this is done just by having a diverse cast of characters. Everyone performs their roles perfectly. Not a single time did I chat with someone and think that they were lacking. I love talking to every single NPC that I came across, or hearing what a boss had to say to me before they tried knocking my head off. And with that, I think, speaking of knocking someone's head off, will do nicely into a transition for gameplay. So my first thought when talking about how Hades 2 feels as a game to play, all of the controls are balanced, Melinoë moves in a way that you expect her to every single time. She's never like jumping off in some weird direction or ending up somewhere that you didn't intend her to. I played on controller, and I highly suggest that for anyone who's picking up an action game like this. Keyboard and mouse seems to work perfectly fine, but a controller just feels right. You start off with limited weapons and you unlock more over time. Same goes for the boons from gods and the like, but over the course of the game, I was still finding new enemies, new gods, and boons, along with new upgrades for weapons, and even after 50 plus hours into the game, I had some of my go-to choices being the axe and the scythe, and boons from Hephaestus. I wasn't necessarily afraid to try new things and mix it up. I would mix and match any of these options to have a more unique and engaging experience, and it felt great. Getting that unique boon that changes the way that my cast functions or how my combo finishes, it's ever so slight sometimes, but those tweaks over a run allow for a dynamic and fun outcome. Each time that I fought a final boss, I almost had to engage them in a new way depending on how I built my character throughout that run. Sometimes I had to rely on ranged attacks or getting in their face, maybe waiting strictly for cooldowns of my cast to do the most damage. And this is my favorite part of the game, honestly. Not only are the options expanded over time, but they pretty much all feel great. Combine that with the progression elements that make the combat and gameplay just fucking sing, there are runs that I felt like a god. Other times, a measly mortal, but that's all part of the game. Trial and error, having fun, and retrying it again. These games are in a sorta top-down and angled camera perspective that can sometimes be a little bit weird because the perspective makes you think you're in one spot of avoiding an attack in a certain way when sometimes you maybe aren't, but over the course of playing the game, this thought was ejected from my brain as I got into a trance from just moving seamlessly from one enemy to the other and from zone to zone. The way that you compare and contrast your fights with Typhon versus Kronos is also very drastic. Kronos is methodical, moving in specific patterns, using his small frame to be fast, but also have a ton of thought and specifics to his combat. Typhon, on the other hand, is a maniacal monster who's going to just smash and crash the fuck out of everything in front of him, and that includes you, causing the arena to be covered in attacks at all times. It's frantic, fast action, and that's the name of his game. You don't get a moment to stop and think, you just have to react. So these contrasting points of gameplay is some of the most fun that you can have when choosing which run to complete. Are you going to try to reach the House of Hades or go up to Mount Olympus? The The choice is yours. Now I think it's time to chat about progression, because I do think it sort of goes hand in hand with gameplay here, and during your runs you'll receive many different currencies, such as gold, which is something that you'll spend throughout your run, but you might pick up some ashes, some bones, or any of the other materials while you're out and about. You take these back to the crossroads, utilize them for a multitude of upgrades or exchanging goods, and we'll start with Arcana cards to chat about. These are upgraded using multiple currencies later in the game, but mostly boss loot. And early on, and still for a majority of it, you're using a currency called Psyche. This allows you to not only unlock new cards, but also to upgrade them. Now, if you're anything like me, you will find a good few that work together, and then you just use those till infinity. And so I never really swapped them out for others. The only time that I did so was when I was able to kind of unlock a new combination of cards, or maybe upgrade one that I might not have used prior to the upgrade. These cards give you that small passive or perk that goes into your next run, causing extra damage, movement speed, overall health, and magic. Sometimes they're pretty simple like that, but other times they're a bit more complicated, like giving you more percentage chance to find duo boons from gods, or maybe if you don't have an extra life known as Death Defiance, then you can take less damage and deal more damage. What's fun about this is some of them are activated automatically in tandem with other cards that you have to meet specific requirements for, but outside of those, you get to really just choose the few that fit with you. They do have to fit within your maximum grasp, which is just really the max amount of cards that you can have. It's presented by the strength of the cards though, because let's say that you have 20 total grasp. Well, you can grab a few level 4s or 3s or 2s, but you just can't exceed a maximum of 20 as a combined number. Now, other upgrades and random tidbits of progression are unlocking new weapons, alternative versions of those weapons, and then upgrades to those weapons, and the perks that they provide. You also have pets that you can choose from a few that will help you in combat, and upgrading these enhances them ever so slightly, but all these little upgrades can add up over the course of the game. And like I said before, that is the part that I enjoy the most. Obtaining new, fun, and a more variety of weapons and items is great. I enjoy Risk of Rain 2 and Megabonk, or any of the other games that are like it, but just having a small bit of persistent upgrades just feels that much better. I mean, just give me a 1% increase on something and I don't care, man. Let it be the smallest little something and I'll be happy. Just give me something. There are also some small cosmetic upgrades and other systems not related directly to gameplay, like the plants that allow for other upgrades, or even having a bath with someone. That's right, you can give NPCs some of these currencies as well, which allow you to obtain a new trinket on the first time of handing over some of that sweet nectar. There is a ton to go over there, including the idea of having a relationship with someone, but just know that you can slowly get more dialogue options and develop a deeper relationship with everyone around you just by handing over some of these goods. But the ways that you progress directly within gameplay is impressive. Combination of boons and items can lead to something deadly, but they do play specific roles in your possibilities. Obtaining a specific combination of boons and upgrades will allow you to get more dynamic ones later of higher rarity. Maybe a duo or legendary one that was unobtainable unless you got those other 4 specific ones prior. You're always working towards something in Hades too, whether it's during that run or back at home at the crossroads. But alright, I know you've been waiting for it, so let's talk about the art, graphics, world design, and characters. Let's just come out and say it that Hades 2 stands out as an art piece. Starting with all of the gods and characters, every single god and the like that you come across is drawn to perfection. Whether they're showing off parts of their bodies like Aphrodite, or just looking like a badass like Nemesis standing in a corner. Skelemius always cracks me up as well because he looks so goofy yet tries to be so serious. Medea always looking like a snack, Hecate looking like she could crush me and I want her to. Dionysus wearing a Speedo and showing off his schmeat for everybody. Every single person has some charm to them, and they also have a slight shimmer and glow. This prevents each character from looking too static compared to the previous game, because again, they are just drawings that are slightly interacting with each other, but it adds some more dynamicism to it. Each character has their own colors and hairstyles and armor and outfits, and everything is uniquely drawn to fit that character. I specifically love how Chaos Chaos is shown, and a close second behind that is probably Charon or Artemis. I just love me some Charon, dude. He's always moaning and groaning, yet looking more badass than half the gods that you meet. He's got that glowing smoky aura around him, and he's a fucking vibe. And Artemis is always so thoughtful, but in a sort of standoffish way. She looks so just down to earth. She wants to help you, but in her own way. She also comes to the crossroads to sing on occasion where you can join her. I could literally sit here and listen to this for the rest of my fucking life because it is such a good song, and all the characters in this game really like to hear themselves talk, and they have a lot to say about almost nothing. They are all just so eloquent and at the same time fucking stupid, yet they're so goddamn pretty. I'm not saying that I want to bang some of these characters, but I would bang some of these characters. Anywho, the detail put into each person is just chef's kiss. A small thing that I love for each individual one is the jewelry or trinkets that they wear. These unique character designs, they're just so goddamn good, and there are so many of them. Yet I know instantly who is who without any question. And speaking more of the world and graphics overall, Hades was already a very pretty game, and so Hades 2 just cranks it up a notch. Supergiant Games has always had their own way of having a specific art direction that is now just being copied by so many people. None of them are doing as good of a job as Supergiant, of course, but each zone, whether it be on the surface or in the underworld, is procedurally generated to a small degree, and they have a little bit of differences, but I wasn't blown away by any of the sections in the underworld. They did leave me wanting a little bit more, but the moment that I stepped on the surface, I was blown away. I was chatting with some of my friends just going, hot damn, they didn't put an entire second game up in here. The rundown city that you start in, the ghost ships right after that, leading to Olympus and so on, they are all impressive in their own rights. But my favorite is for sure, hands down, the ghost ships. The Rift of Thessaly. Chaos's realm is also very fun, and Oceanus probably falls right behind them from the underworld. And let's just say that I've enjoyed Supergiant's way of keeping themes within their locations, and they've not faltered in Hades 2 either. The graphics overall are not crazy top-line stuff where you're going to be blown away by the realism. As soon as you look at it and you glance at this, you know it's gorgeous regardless. Saying that it's pretty is an understatement because every nook and cranny has details from water and grass and candles and barrels, pots and pans, you name it. They're probably somewhere in the environment that you can get a glimpse of, and they add those small minute details that create this diverse environment that you enjoy running through. Alright, now for our final big topic. We are going to chat about difficulty and the enemies that you fight, in particular with the bosses. When starting the game, I died so fucking easily. I thought I was doing something wrong, honestly, or that I just really sucked at video games. But no, that's not really the case. Instead, you have to learn how to play. It's part of it, since dashing around is so vital, and I sort of forgot that at the beginning of the game. Secondary, you don't start off with many perks due to the Arcana cards not being unlocked or not having many options for them right off the rip. Without some of these perks and bonuses or upgrades, the game is not easy, but as you keep going and gaining these small incremental upgrades, the game starts to ease off a little. It becomes more manageable each run. My first dozen or so runs, I had a hard time just getting to Hecate or Scylla in the underworld, but by the 100th time that I had ran into them, I could make it all the way there without even getting hit, because not only was I able to learn the enemy patterns and best way to dispatch them, but I also had the right boons and upgrades in the right places to just help push me right along. And I think if you turned away by the initial challenge of getting killed after just a few small hits from these basic enemies, don't feel bad. It's meant to start off slow and almost halt your progression from being too fast. Then you just get a little further each time that you do a run, and bam, one day you're at the final boss and putting a spear through him with ease. The enemy variety is something that I want to touch on a little, because in the underworld, every zone has its unique set of about 8 to maybe 10 enemies, and some areas have a little bit more variety and some of them have a little less, but I felt that if they had any less number of dudes for me to fight, I'd probably start getting a little bored. But with this kind of sweet spot of 8 to 10 enemies. It was just the right mix. Every once in a while I wanted just a little bit more, but then I would randomly come up to a new mini boss after 70 hours into the game, and this was the octopus guy for me. I hit him at like hour mark number 68 or something like that. It had me on my toes, dying to it the first time that I had ever seen it because I did know its mechanics and it kind of just wiped the floor with me. Bosses, on the other hand, don't switch it up too much. They fight you with a similar moveset each time, and they can all hit pretty fucking hard, especially Typhon. As I said before, every boss is unique with builds and weapon combos that might work for one and then kind of maybe screw you over on the next one. But that's part of the fun, right? There isn't a single boss fight that I felt was lacking in diversity and fun moments, whether they were smashing me with a giant room clearing attack or spawning little guys to just pester me during the fight, or even dashing around the arena like a madman, similar to what I was doing. Every fight is engaging and has a specific load to it, and the mini bosses, on the other hand, they were just okay. Some of them were a bit annoying or not really that good because of how easy they were to just kind of mow through them and keep chugging along, but at a certain point you will unlock a tablet that can allow you to add difficulty modifiers called fears, giving enemies more health, damage, speed, shields, or even just more enemies in general. There's time constraints as well, new boss variants, and just a ton of combinations that you can make with these. They do give you specialized currencies when you utilize the fear system for future upgrades, so if you are a masochist or you want to just do everything and anything that's available in the game, then have fun with these. I put a few of them on here just to test it out, but prior to me beating the main story, this made it a little too hard. I couldn't kind of get through things because I had added too many modifiers ahead of time, so it was not a good idea. I did get a bit stuck and I really wanted to get past these zones with the modifiers applied, but I just fucking couldn't. After maybe a few dozen attempts to do so, I just gave up and removed them and I beat the game. But then once I did, I put some of them back on just to try a few runs out for fun, and apparently they can change the game more dynamically than I thought. One of my friends explained that there are many optional bosses and changes that come with them as you complete the game a handful more times after completing the main story. I didn't do but maybe 3 or 4 extra runs after beating the story, so I might go back one day and return just to kind of test these out, but for now I'm happy with everything that I've seen. All this to say that the game can be difficult at times or be a bit of a cakewalk, especially if you get that god run going. They are rare, and I think I had maybe only 2 my entire time playing, but when you get them, oh god, does it feel fucking good. But just know, if you're having a bit of a hard time, keep playing and more than likely you'll get some items or upgrades that help you succeed on your next runs. Alright, so UI and the early access stuff is something that I want to mention very briefly here. The UI is great, it's incredibly done, everything is pretty clear and laid out in front of you. Descriptions of items and attributes are vital, so it's great that they're clear to understand, and even the general combat UI showing health, items, upgrades, boons, and abilities, all of these are good and maintain a minimal approach while also giving you just the right amount of information and not overcrowding the screen. But they're also not being less informative, so it strikes a good balance of being helpful but yet not intrusive to gameplay. The final results screen is a bit cluttered, but they throw every stat available to you, so if you want to be a nerd about it, it's there. I didn't really pay much attention to it outside of which ability or weapon did the most damage during that run. Then with the early access, I read and heard from some people that they slightly changed the ending of the story in small ways, but that it was overall not a large change and didn't really impact them that much. The game was in early access for quite a while, but they finalized it and tweaked some of the portions before they fully released it. I am always the type to wait until a game is fully finished for the most part before I like to jump in. So unless I'm pressured by friends or something else to check it out early, I'd rather just wait for the full experience and package upon release. I know a lot of people enjoy seeing it change over the years from the early access, but I just have too many other games to play. So just know that I did play this after the 1.0 fully released and I did not touch it in its early access form. But alright, that's going to be pretty much it. My final thoughts for this review is that I was torn between 2 amazing games at being number 2 for my games of the year in 2025. And yes, I am late with reviews, so fight me if you have a problem. I live at 123 I'm a beat your ass street. You can come find me. Anyways, Expedition 2033 was number 1 for my game of the year, no question. But for second place, it was a much harder choice for me, Silksong or Hades 2. And I honestly don't think that I can make that choice. I think that they are both equally impressive with things to say and show, and I love them both. Hades is bombastic and fun and a hell of a ride, always giving me something to work toward and experience. But then we have Silksong, a game that genuinely beat my fucking ass. The themes and what it had to show me, along with learning the genuine idea of perseverance in a bleak, self-destructive world, they're both incredible games. And Hades 2, if not for many other games coming out around it this year, would have probably been my game of the year, but just like its predecessor, the entire package that is Hades 2 is incredible. It's double the scope, size, artistry, and effort, all put into a sequel, and I wouldn't ask for it any other way. That's gonna wrap up this review. I hope you enjoyed as always. Please do all that fun YouTube stuff, yada yada, comment, like, yeah, blah blah blah. You know what it is, and I will see you next time.